Connecting community through business, building relationships, and building Waterloo Region. 570 News presents Business to Business, powered by Save on Energy. Here's your host, Glenn Pelletier.
Welcome to Business on 570 News, powered by Save on Energy. Ian McLean, Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce CEO and President, and Greg Durocher in the house as well. He is the President and CEO of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce. Gentlemen, final weekend of summer, and things are picking up, as things often do in the autumn.
Things are picking up, obviously. We've had the close of nomination day, so all the candidates are in their boxes and ready to go, and they're, I guess, standing on their soapboxes now on the street corners and saying why we should support them. And we're going to talk to actually the mayor of Kitchener, Carl Zaire, who's not running. And my assumption is he probably doesn't have a horse in this race. He's a neutral guy sitting on the outside. But it's always great to talk to Carl anyway. Well, yeah, and he's long-serving mayor. I think he'll give us a perspective on not only what Kitchener faces, but I think more broadly what the municipalities face in the next 4 years. And as we were talking off air, boy, there's going to be a big turnaround or turnover on the regional council. When you have, I mean, we'll do the numbers with him because he'll probably know them all, but I think it's going to be somewhere between 8 and 10 new members. So it's going to be a brand new council, and that's both good and bad. You'll lose some of the institutional memory, but there'll be some fresh perspectives, and so it'll be interesting to hear because he's served on regional council and as mayor of Kitchener for a long time. So and you know what? Even when you leave council like that, like he's doing, you're always concerned about what's going on, and you kind of stay in tune with what's going on. Certainly for a few years, anyway. And later in the show, we'll talk a little bit about we're going to the Canadian Chamber annual meeting in Charlottetown at the end of the month. We've got a couple of resolutions that our chamber's put forward and your chamber's supporting. So we'll talk a little bit about that and the importance of the network, because that's what we're part of. Both the Ontario Chamber, the Canadian Chamber, is a network of 450 chambers across the country. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And I think we also should talk about the Scottish referendum, and I think that was really interesting. And I was looking at this last night and saying, I thought about you because of your roots. Of course, Scottish. We are cheap. No, I'm just. But one of the things that I got thinking about, because all the analysis, because I watched the BBC feed for 6 hours last night. Now, not many people would do that, but as political junkie, I was interested in watching it, and it was a lot of the same discussion that I remember when we had the last referendum in Quebec, and why people are thinking independence is better, and a lot of it boiled down to economics and people's view of whether it would benefit them in their pocketbook. And it was interesting to watch the polls as they went up and down, what it meant to what the markets were doing in the UK and what the dollar or the pound and the euro were doing. So that's and we'll talk about political influence. Like, you know what? Maybe that shouldn't have anything to do with business, or most people say, well, what does it have to do? Has everything to do with business. Well, it works both ways. Business influences politics, and politics influences business. So interesting show, and I think this is the season. I mean, once every 4 years, the whole fall is taken over with elections, and I kind of like it. It is a draining time, as you well know. You do the debate thing, which is extremely draining. Time consuming. And I do one-on-one interviews with our candidates. Well, hello. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's Glenn and Eric.
I have to book a week off during election time to moderate. I don't know how many chamber debates. We give them all the opportunity to be covered with glory. Oh yeah. Glenn Pelletier up here. No, you guys have to organize. No, but that is a lot of work. I've got now in the camp. We've been doing one-on-one interviews. I got about 35 or 40 one-on-one interviews. Same questions, same answers over and over. But it's about highlighting personalities. And and kudos to the chambers, both of your chambers, for organizing these debates. I mean, you've got the region, you've got all three cities, and Woolwich Township on October 1st. And I'll tell you what, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know that the October 1st Woolwich Township debate. Oh, that's going to be interesting. I mean, at the best of times, anytime, you know what it's like up on Monroe Way. They pack that place, and they're very strongly opinionated. Little added dimension this time around. Yeah. Well, we'll see. There's a few weeks to come and see if things settle out there, because I'm not commenting until we. It'll be like having a maple syrup festival. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. But there's issues in every one of these, so. So it's going to be, but it is going to be a fascinating time. I mean, and I've been talking to people that have, like my dad and others.
no one can remember where there is absolutely guaranteed going to be the type of turnover that you see, certainly on regional council since it's been formed, but also on some of the city councils, with the exception of Waterloo, and I was part of one of those where the whole previous council was sent packing. But with every council, there's going to be new faces, and that sometimes doesn't happen. There are a lot of times there will be one or two new faces in the entire spectrum of councillors and mayors and school board trustees, but there's going to be a lot of new faces. And it's important for us to help people understand what people's views are before they get elected.
All right. Lots to get to this morning. And pleased to be joined at this time with another KW Oktoberfest update by the Executive Director of Kitchener-Waterloo Oktoberfest, Dave McNeil.
Dave, thanks for coming in again. We last week we talked about all the business-to-business aspect of Oktoberfest. This year we're going to talk about something that is Greg Durocher's favorite topic.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it already.
Which is food. And so tell us about the culinary aspect of Oktoberfest, because I think people don't realize it's a lot more than just beer. So tell us about what you got going on in your culinary sections of the festival.
You're right, Ian. Culinary's become a big part of what Oktoberfest is. Oktoberfest certainly isn't a time to diet and watch your waistline, man. Some people do. For me, it's easy to watch my waistline. I just look down and it just keeps coming out. But there's lots of great food. And
apparently Ian McLean doesn't diet before Oktoberfest either.
So one of the standards of our thing, and it happened a couple of weeks ago, was Stein and Dine, where we bring in a celebrity chef who creates a 4-course dinner paired with beer. We bring in a cicerone, which is the equivalent to a sommelier in wine, who really breaks down what beer is and how it pairs with food. And it's a upscale corporate event, and we've had really good feedback from people that come. They haven't thought about it before, and when you really break it down and think about it, the beer pairings really make a lot of sense.
Dave, I was at that event this year a couple of weeks ago, and I forget the chef's name, the main guy, but
Corbin Tomensky.
You know what? That's a tough job to keep the energy up and to keep it entertaining. He did an amazing job.
And it is. And Corbin put a different spin on it. He's all about food as the experience of sharing and community and involvement and talking. And he's not one of these stand behind the stovetop and, chop it this way and mix it with this. He's all about the sharing the experience. Which really was interesting spin, and it sort of turned our whole thought process around. And out of Stein and Dine, we thought, one of the things we hear from some of our restaurant partners in town or some of the restaurants that, during Oktoberfest, their business takes a hit. 9 days, people festing and going to the fest hall. So we've created a program this year called Oktoberlicious with Molson. And what we're doing is we're getting restaurants and boards starting September 27th through to the 19th. Various restaurants and towns will have an Oktoberfest menu paired with a beer pairing. Some of them might be a 3-course dinner. Some of them might be like a schnitzel on a bun and a beer, or it might be chicken wings in beer with a little Oktoberfest spin. So
is that sort of similar to what they would do in so New York City? I know they have Restaurant Week where if you participate, you can go in and there's a set menu. You can also get other things, but if you want to participate in that, is that type of idea?
It's similar to it. I was at Restaurant Week for the first time this year, and whereas New York City, they've got it sort of pinpointed to, lunch is a $25, 3-course meal, dinner is a $38.
Yeah.
This year, we're just trying to get restaurants engaged, and I think it's something that we're building towards, that we can help some of our partners envision it and grow it. So
that's an excellent idea to engage, I think, a broader spectrum of the businesses. Some of them that maybe, as you say, felt in the past that they take a little bit of a hit because everything's centered here. What we're really trying to do, and what you're trying to do, David, is you're really trying to create that entire atmosphere of celebration, but more importantly, economic development throughout the business community. I think it's great.
Exactly, and we're having some great success with it. We thought at first, if we could get 7 to 10 restaurants in our first year, we would be good. Well, the first day we went out, we had 11 restaurants on board, and they just keep trickling in because I think they all see it as a a natural. We've got some media behind it. We've got ads in the paper. We've got a website set up specifically for the program so people can jump on and see who's offering what, and it gives them an opportunity to put their full menu up there.
I think it's a fantastic idea. Well. It's really going to engage them, and I think everybody, and this is really the message Ian, you and I talk about all the time, is businesses capitalizing on what's going on in the community to try and bolster their own business.
And that's, I was the Uptown councillor, and when you have festivals in Uptown, some of the business owners say, "Geez, my business really it takes a hit," and I would always say, get involved. Let people know that you're there, and be there even though you don't do business or in that particular moment. Let them know that you're out there. So taking advantage of Oktoberfest and saying, there's lots of people who may say, I want to come back and try that restaurant because, boy, I had a great experience there. And I think that's the type of thing that type of program will be helpful with.
All right. Again, Dave, thanks so much for coming. Dave McNeil has been our guest. He is the Executive Director of Kitchener-Waterloo Oktoberfest, joining us with another Kitchener-Waterloo Oktoberfest update. This is Business to Business on 570 News.
Business to Business, powered by Save on Energy, a presentation of 570 News. Watch the live video webcast at 570news.com. We'll return with more Business to Business. 570 News.
Welcome back to Business on 570 News. This segment of Business to Business is brought to you by Gallagher's Travel, and we are delighted to have with us in studio Kitchener Mayor Carl Zaire. Carl is the longest-serving mayor in Kitchener history, and alas, he is moving on to the next chapter of his life after this election of October 27th. Mr. Zaire, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. Pleasure to be here.
Now, I guess maybe because I'll get your resume wrong, because you've been around Kitchener politics for a long, long time. When were you first? You were first elected to City Council in
1985.
1985. And while you're the most successful Kitchener politician that I can recall, you did have one little. Your first kick at the mayor's chair was not a success.
I had changed the wording a little bit there. It's very subtle. In 1994, after being on council for 9 years, I said that I wasn't able to give the attention to my accounting practice and to council as I wished. And therefore, the mayor's chair came open, and I said, I think I would be a good mayor, and I will try to run for this election. There were 9 candidates for...
Is that right? I don't remember that. 9?
Enough for a baseball team. And there were 4 of us that were more, I would say... considered credible candidates, and the vote got split. And I didn't lose; I just didn't win.
Yeah, okay, I take that. I didn't win twice as well myself. Yeah. But anyways, this has been. You've done some amazing things in Kitchener. I remember working in a small retail shop in downtown Kitchener. 15 or 18 years ago, and it was not the place it is today. Mm-hmm. So talk about the changes you've seen from your perspective, because from my opinion, there's been a lot of positive change in Kitchener over the last number of years, especially since you've been in the mayor's chair.
Well, that's true, but I also want to give credit to not just from my office, but from the council who had the courage and the guts to actually make some bold moves and make that kind of change. I believe that over the years there has been a feeling, not unlike what you just talked about, that there were empty stores. It didn't have the same kind of vibe and feel, and people wanted to see some dramatic change. So actually, in that 94 to 97 period of time, the then mayor, the then council, did actually form a task force, and it was a blue ribbon task force, and they came up with a number of great ideas, and it was the response, or the report that they gave rather, was towards the end of that term, so they didn't get to the implementation stage. And we certainly continued some of the things that they were talking about at that time, but we also, it took us a number of years after that to really get it into the implementation stage and recognize that the manufacturing sector was changing and the jobs are being lost. We didn't know exactly how that was going to unfold, and we certainly didn't anticipate specifically what happened in 2008. Mm-hmm. So it was 2003, 2004 that we made some of this dramatic change with our Economic Development Investment Fund.
Well, I have to say, Carl, it's been an amazing transformation. Those of us who are kind of involved, region-wide and have watched what you have led your council to do, I think it's been an amazing and strategic methodology in how to rebuild a community from the core. And, oftentimes communities ignore their cores. And we've got examples of that all over the province. And, the reality of it is that's the foundation of your community. And if you haven't got a strong core, you weaken the rest of the community.
Well, in fact, I think everyone can relate to this, whether they travel in North America or in Europe, any part of the world, that when you go to a new community, someplace you haven't been before, where's the first place you go?
We go exactly
right down to the center of town. Mm-hmm. Because what that does, how that feels, how that looks, gives you the first impression of what this community is all about. And so this was an argument that I was putting forward all the way along and saying to people who even live in the suburbs, and I live in the suburbs, I have most of my life, that it is important for all of the citizens to actually have some pride in their city. They don't want to have one particular part of the city as a blight. And I believe that our core was deteriorating, not unlike most North American cities.
In fact, well, look at the deterioration of Detroit's core and what it's affected in their growth.
And the other, people don't remember. Back in those days, downtown Waterloo or uptown Waterloo faced some of those same challenges. And we were fortunate that it wasn't as big. Physically, it wasn't as big, but Waterloo faced a lot of those challenges too. So, but I want to move on a little bit and say, you've served on both as mayor of Kitchener, but also on regional council. There are going to be big turnovers, especially on regional council, after this election. And we've got, we were trying to do the math before.
Well, 4 mayors for sure not returning.
Yeah, 4 mayors not returning. There's one regional councillor in Kitchener. There's one in Cambridge. And so that's so there'll be at least 6 new councillors, maybe as many as maybe 8 or 10.
It will be a significant change. Interestingly enough, though, there was a significant change the last time around as well, in the last 2 terms. Not just one, and because there were some new mayors in various municipalities. So change is good, but you also need that stability.
But if 50% of it changed over,
it has,
you could really change the dynamics of how the region is governed.
Yes, you could. And that is a concern if there are certain elements that of the community and those who are running right now were to come in. I would suggest that, and this is from my perspective, because not all people agree with me.
You can have your own personal opinion now.
Now I can.
Now you can.
I'll say, if worst case scenario, some of the naysayers of a few things, and particularly LRT, were to get elected, I believe that they would get there and realize, oops, I can't make the change that I thought I could make. And there's evidence of that in local municipalities where there were some promises made in election times when they got into office that they were restricted in making those moves. What people have to remember is that a mayor has 1 vote on council, and an individual councillor has obviously 1 vote. And so issues are resolved by talking to each other and trying to influence other members of council to have that same opinion. It takes, in our case in Kitchener, there's great debate, and there is some division on positioning, but it takes 6. Mm-hmm. So you always have to remember that 6 to make a decision.
Well, and I think, just to echo that, when some of the people, I was on council for 2 terms, and some people were elected saying we're going to stop the development on the west side of Waterloo, and we as a council, the first 3 years I was there, dealt with this issue literally month after month after month for 3 years, and we got and. You have to sometimes understand the limitations of what change you can make. There are legal decisions that are made, and what interesting, some people, as you say, ran and said we're going to stop the west side, got in and realized there was nothing they could do, and so that is troubling when people campaign on something and then immediately have to break their promise, because it really does affect the trust that people have in their politicians when you make a promise and then realize you can't keep it.
You like to hear some specific things from a candidate as to which way they would be going on a particular issue. But I would put forward that it is much, much more important to understand how a person makes decisions.
Exactly.
And where they come from in terms of the perspective they bring. That is absolutely critical. For people who come into an election and they are there for one reason and one reason alone, I think that is folly, because government, particularly local government, is a very complex business, and it is a business, and it is a big business.
Well, as Ian and I have talked about I think a couple of weeks ago we talked about this, that because both of us had that experience of not being on council and then coming in and then all of a sudden going through orientation and finding out, holy smokes, this is a little bit bigger nut than I thought it was. You know, I thought it was my interest here that was going to shine, when you find out that you've got this entire community you're building and all diverse opinions and from neighborhoods and who wants what and who doesn't, and I think the single issue candidates, as you mentioned, are problematic. They get there and find out their issue isn't maybe as big to the entire community as they once thought.
And it's much easier for an individual. I think it's human nature that we want to identify and we talk about things, and this is where councillors, I think, fall into the trap sometimes, is to talk about, in the case of a building, well, how high is it going to be and what's the shape of the building, as opposed to the policy decision, do we need the building in the first place, and how is it going to be used? So I think that that's the more important part. The issue related to the ION, LRT, I believe, is, for those who are opposed to it, have missed the real long-term perspective of what it is that it is going to be. And, I can understand the emotion and I can sympathize with it, but we have a greater responsibility, both legal and I would say ethical responsibility when you once elected, to reflect on what this is going to mean for not 4 years, but for 5, 10, 30 years out. That's the difference.
Yeah, and I think what people misunderstand when they're running for office is that municipal the rules that are there and the policies are, it's more of a blunt instrument than surgical. It's very difficult to be surgical. So that's tough. In the last few minutes that we have, just give us your perspective on what you're going to miss about politics and what you're looking forward to, because I know there was great opportunities when I left and I loved lots of it, but there was parts of it that I was pleased to leave behind, and I knew there was going to be new opportunities, and I think you've got such a wealth of experience. I'm interested to know what's next for you, other than maybe taking a bit of time for yourself, but I hope that you're going to stay involved in the community.
Certainly, and I've been meeting with people throughout the community, and there will, I'm sure, be lots of opportunity, not-for-profit organizations who will call upon me, and if they need an answer now, it's no, because I want to have some time to reflect. I want to have some time, and I know that on December 1st, I fall off the cliff. Yeah. The emails go from hundreds to zero. And so I'm prepared for that, but it will be an adjustment, and I'm looking forward to perhaps doing some consulting in the field, or perhaps even some corporate board work. And I'll fill my time. I'm sure it will be certainly an adjustment. I'm looking forward to it.
Good. Well, we could talk forever about that next chapter of your life, and perhaps we'll do that on another occasion. Mayor Zare, thank you for sharing your time today.
Pleasure to be here.
Kitchener Mayor Carl Zare has been our guest on Business to Business on 570 News.
We'll be right back with more Business to Business powered by Save on Energy. Call in with your questions at star 570, 570-2545 or 1-800-570-5715. It's what you know. It's who you know. Connecting community through business. This is Business to Business on 570 News, powered by Save on Energy.
Welcome back to Business on 570 News. This segment of Business to Business is brought to you by our good friends at Cowan Insurance. And you have a big conference coming up, right?
Yeah, we do. We're both going to be in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island later next week. This is the annual meeting of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, where chambers from across the country get together, and we debate and ratify policies that are from groundswell organizations like Chambers of Commerce that come up with ideas on supporting business and setting federal policy around business businesses and helping them, probably do more globally as well, because we're really in that global market. But the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce certainly is really proud to support wholeheartedly a resolution coming out of Ian's organization, the Greater KW Chamber of Commerce, and it's called Expanding Markets and Technology for Canadian Food and Beverage Manufacturers. Not just because, Ian, our area is, we've got the benefit of having a lot of food processors and manufacturers in the food.
In fact, it is the number one employer in the entire region of Waterloo is food processing when you take it as fullness. So this is hugely important to the region of Waterloo.
And to the employees that here, employers, but also the fact that John Tibbetts and what they've done out of Conestoga College around
Institute
food
processing
is just phenomenal.
Expand on what do you mean when you say food processing? I mean, I have an idea. What are you talking about?
Well, it could cover everything from Grand River to the Elmira Poultry, Grand River Foods, Schneider's. I know they're closing down, but there are especially in South Kitchener and Cambridge, there are a ton of people that are doing Dare food, Dare cookies. I mean, you go down the list, there's more than you think. And it was a surprise to me when we started really digging into the manufacturing thing, that manufacturing is still roughly, 20% of the economic activity in the region. And it's probably the number one employer. When you put all those together, it's the number one employer in the region of Waterloo. And I don't think people realize that. So this is important because of the work that the college is doing, and it's high tech now.
It's
food
really
processing is high tech. They're wearing hairnets and white lab coats and using computers. And so food processing is a high value added.
To give you an example of how high tech it is right now, years and years ago, Schneider's, for example, when they had their beef kill room off in a separate place. They had the hog in another one and chicken in another one because they had to keep it separated because of sanitary reasons. Today, those are all done in the same room. And so the technology behind how to keep things sanitary is like out of this world. You've got to have engineers on the floor watching this and monitoring it, and you've got to have equipment in there that engineers have to build and have to operate. So the technology behind not just manufacturing, but food processing manufacturing is getting really, really, really advanced.
And the reason for this resolution, which is talking about expanding markets and the technology for the food processing industry, is that in a global marketplace, you need to have everything from the primary agriculture, whether it's beef or pork or poultry, right through grains and traditional farming. You need to have a lot of things in place, so all of the policies and resource allocations for everything from safety issues to how to get to market. And there's one thing that Canada is lagging on is there's supply management boards. There's all kinds of things which need to be addressed, and I think this is really calling the federal government to continue to have a consolidation, if you will, of these policies, so that it's a level playing field, not only for all Canadian companies, but that we can start to have more of a level playing field across the world.
What is this resolution all about? Is this something that your respective chambers are bringing to the meeting?
Yeah.
Yes.
And we often in here we would go through 50 or 75 resolutions that come from across the country. This is one that we've put forward.
In a nutshell, what are you asking for?
Yeah, we're asking for the government to take more. Or continue on the work of saying of coordinating the aspects of exports, because that's where the growth opportunity is around the world. And so it's asking the government to cement the all the regulations across the spectrum of food processing, and then take those out into those global trade agreements we have to give more opportunities for Canadian companies. So, I mean, some of these things can get pretty detailed, but this is the sort of thing we want this resolution packed. There's a lot of background. It comes from our policy committees. I know your policy guys have been looking at this. And what we then say is it goes to Perrin Beatty and his staff and say, Perrin, go and talk to the federal government. So,
yeah. Right. I know you guys wanted to touch on the referendum, the Scottish referendum, and the result there, 55% saying no, where we want to stay in the UK. We can't vote. We can't vote. We can't vote for independence.
It's interesting, though. 300 years of the United Kingdom, all of a sudden rising up and saying, gee, maybe we should have a second look at this.
Well, and what I found interesting about this, and I watched, as I said earlier in the show, I watched for 3 or 4 hours or maybe 5 hours on the BBC feed on TV last night. And they go through the whole year when the referendum was called. I think this is very similar to what happened in Quebec. Everyone said, it's going to be 60-40 or 65-35. And it got real close at the end of the race because I think people were genuinely captivated, and even both sides would admit there was a lot of engagement by citizens in this. But what I found interesting again was there's the politics of it, but how this sort of political issue really can affect business.
The markets are all over the place.
Were all up and down, and in the end, the Scottish pound and the euro and the markets were all going down. I think at the end, when the polls started to stabilize and showed that the no, we're going to stay in the UK, started to look like it was going to win. That got built in. The market built it in, and all of a sudden it started to rise again, long before the votes were cast. And you're going, so business does pay attention to these things because they have a material impact on a business. If you're operating in Scotland and say, boy, we could have 18 months of negotiations with Westminster and London about how to separate and how to disentangle us from 300 years of history. Boy, that's really disconcerting to business.
It's not unlike what we talked about with Carl Zara, but the fact that there could be a whole change in political leadership in the region of Waterloo. What effect's that going to have? There are, even though that's on a municipal level, there are a lot of businesses looking at that and saying, especially the development industry, I'm sure, is looking at that and saying, what kind of an effect that could have. So.
Yeah, and I guess is never a good thing.
No, uncertainty isn't, and I guess that's why, sometimes when some people say, boy, you talk about politics a lot on the show, and I say, that's true, and that's one of the big things that we do. Yes, we do networking and advocacy events in our respective organizations, but talking about policy and talking about how government impacts business is a huge part of what we do, because every time you have a municipal government that makes a change on development policy, or the provincial government adds regulation or passes a new tax, it affects business. It affects the choices that business make.
And sadly for Scottish unity, this was not a resounding yes vote. And cynics have suggested that if Glaswegians had turned out in greater number, the yes side might have won. My point is, it wasn't a resounding indicator that we want to stay in the UK.
10 points is big, though. 10 points is really big.
Or looked at another way, 55%.
Yeah, but I mean, I think at the end of the day, when you had what you have is they still won by 200,000 votes. So if people in Glasgow had showed up in greater numbers, it would have just been closer. I think 55-45 is still a pretty healthy majority. But the point is, I mean, when it started, it was looking like 65-35, and so the uncertainty that created did impact business through the course of almost a year, over a year and a half of this whole debate happening. But I guess it just speaks to, as we've talked with Carl and we've talked with others in the past of our political leaders, the decisions that government makes and bureaucrats make impact business, and it's important to them. They may not know it before the decision's made, but they sure feel it after.
Oh yeah,
and so that's what I found. I mean, the connection between
we've often had that debate around the office. Why are we always talking politics and politics? Well, because it directly affects how business is going to perceive the environment to do business in. Yeah. Because that's what happens in the political game is the environment can change on how business actually transacts, and that's why business is so connected to politics.
And then we also talk about business being global now, and I mean Kitchener and Waterloo and Cambridge, but we all are in the region of Waterloo.
Exactly.
And any business, and this is where I always have great difficulty with the narrowness of, Waterloo's different than Kitchener's different than Cambridge, and we can debate that any number of ways. But the people that are doing the investing in a global marketplace, they can choose wherever they want to go. And if they say these guys really don't have it together, as in Scotland with that uncertainty, they will choose to go somewhere else because there's always somewhere else to do business. And that's one of the realities where, having some consistency in how you're doing things or certainty, as you say, is really important. And I think it will be really important now, the aftermath, and that's what a lot of the analysts were saying in Scotland. And this is what happened in Quebec after was it was important to not just ignore that. Now you actually have to do some of the changes that were promised to kind of make sure that you don't perpetually have this discussion about separation, whether it's in Quebec or in Scotland.
And by the way, haggis is it's a fantastic...
Lovely. Splendid.
It has this negative image. It's a fantastic...
Well, it's the name. Haggis.
You really just don't want to know what's in it. You just eat it. And,
exactly. You hear the term sheep's stomach, and you tend to recoil at it, but it's a delightful dish.
I'm going to make some for you soon, Glenn.
All right, let's. We digress. I don't want to. I hope people have already had their lunch, but it's underrated. It truly is. You're listening to Business on 570 News.
Business to Business, powered by Save on Energy, a presentation of 570 News. Watch the live video webcast at 570news.com. We'll return with more Business to Business. Waterloo Region. And when businesses support each other, they support the community. Now back to Business, powered by Save on Energy on 570 News.
Welcome back to Business on 570 News, powered by Save on Energy. And our guest now is Jeff Quint from Waterloo North Hydro.
Well, thanks for joining us again, Jeff. And last week we talked about our cooling during these warm months. But something that we use all year round is lighting, of course. And we both have, especially in the summer months, we either out on our patios or we're working outside. And obviously our day-to-day lives using our lighting inside. What are the things that you're trying to promote through Save on Energy as far as lighting's concerned for both a residential and a business user?
What's really hot right now is LEDs. LEDs in lighting, both inside, outside, both at home and at work. These seem to be the next wave in lighting, and they're really starting to gain momentum. And as they gain momentum, the price is dropping, which is further increasing that momentum going forward. And we see many applications for it, whether you're a retail business or you're an office or you're a manufacturing facility, or even at home. There are many applications where you can use LEDs, and they make really good sense and help save a lot of energy and a lot of money.
What exactly is LED lighting? I mean, what's the technology? I mean, it's using less power to get the same amount of lighting, and that's one of the concerns in the early generations was the light as bright? Was it responsive? Like what is LED lighting?
LED lighting is basically electronic lighting, so it's a circuit board powering light emitting diode. So it's basically an electronic component, so like a small computer. And I guess that's the bonus to LED lighting, is that it's come along so far now that you've got a lot of opportunities with LED lighting that you didn't have before with compact fluorescent and regular incandescent. And it's the controllability of them, being able to dim them, being able to build in intelligence in them for timers, motion, changing the color.
So I think, too, I just had a personal experience, Jeff. A couple of years ago, we built a new cottage from the ground up. And of course, we're very cost-conscious on our hydro consumption. It's a rural jurisdiction, so hydro rates are a little bit heavier. And so I was recommended, actually, from the Save on Energy folks to try and look at options where I could incorporate LED lighting. So we put in about 74 pot lights in the building, and then realized at that point, well, where do I get LED bulbs for that? Well, they do come with them. These were halogen fixtures, but they had LED replacements. The really neat thing about it, in two regards, is first off, I could put 74 bulbs in there, and I'm less than 150 watts in power. If they're all on. The other thing, and I remember one of our segments before talking about cooling in the summertime, is comparative to halogen lighting, of course, these are dramatically cooler lights, and that all goes to saving energy around the home with the cooling, too.
Exactly, and it applies at home and at business. And I mean, incentives for these on the business side can range from $6 to $20, $19 to $29, depending on the type of bulbs. And on a homeowner side, we've got coupons that provide up to $5 per bulb back. So, I mean, it's a great time to take advantage of the programs.
So, I mean, the bulbs are still more expensive than a regular incandescent, but the savings are dramatic in terms of your power usage, the heat, and all those sorts of things as well. So, what's the payback? So, if someone's saying, "Well, geez, I can get a set of light bulbs for $1.99, and this one's going to cost me $6.99 or $8.99," for an equivalent LED. What's the payback? Like, why should someone make that investment, whether a business or a homeowner?
Well, you really have to look at the application of the product, and that's really the key is knowing how long it's going to be in use, and that's really the payback is driven by what it's replacing and what it's being used for and how long it's being used for. But generally, I mean, you're looking at lamps that last 25 times longer. So, the longer use applications are the best spot to use LEDs at this point.
Well, as always, we always say, make sure you call your local utility or go to that Save on Energy thing, and you and the gang will be happy to help out any business or homeowner.
You bet.
All right. Thanks, Jeff. Well, we always wrap the show by looking ahead to what is going on at your respective chambers. Greg?
Well, thank you, Glenn, very much.
You're welcome.
On October the 10th, we've got a new program that the Chamber started. Was Learn to Lead with John Maxwell. It's similar to our LeaderCast event that the Greater KW and the Cambridge Chamber do together, but this one's a half-day motivational program with John Maxwell. And on October the 14th, we've got our Women Take Charge breakfast at Langdon Hall with guest speaker Julia Biederman, Executive Dean of the School of Engineering at Conestoga College. And that's a great program. Of course, you can't beat having breakfast at Langdon Hall.
Absolutely. So it's a wonderful thing to always be at Langdon Hall. But we have a very busy week next week, and we talked a little bit about it. But on Tuesday, we have our annual general meeting. So I'll be, it's a great networking event, actually. It'll be at Center in the Square. We always have 100 to 150 senior business people, and we announce our new board of director members. And then the KW Community Foundation has its 30th anniversary event that evening, and the Governor General's in town. And I know they've got some special things planned for that event. And then on Wednesday, we do have, I think it's actually Eric doing, from here from 570, is moderating the debate for the regional chair and the regional councillors for Kitchener and Waterloo. And that'll be 4 to 6 o'clock on Wednesday. Thursday, we have the City of Waterloo's debate. And that'll be, again, Eric's doing that one from 4 to 6 p.m. And then in the evening, we're having our tribute to Mayor Howard, this is her, the Rotary Clubs are putting on an event to thank her for years of service. And on a personal note, I'm very proud. My dad was City of Waterloo is giving him the Waterloo Award, which goes to senior, and along with Ken McLaughlin, who's an old friend of his and is, as you know, a historian and has done a lot of...
Wrote a great book along with John English.
Yeah, absolutely.
The history of Kitchener.
And he helped us a lot with our 125th anniversary doing the research about the chamber over the 125 years. So,
well, I can't say much for his son, but Walter is an absolutely...
You know what?
Actually, I can say a lot about his son, but Walter
no, none of it's
Walter's one of my favorite guys. You know, he's a great guy.
Another popular, very sold-out, inspiring women event.
Oh yeah,
you guys ran.
Yeah, we had that. We had about 600 women yesterday or a Thursday at Bingham's, and it was fabulous. We had some great speakers. Janet Podleski, who from Looney Spoons. We had Julie Coles, and who's Mabel's Labels out of Hamilton. Some of these women, the great speakers, and just so funny. I was rolling in the aisle, and of course I was noticeable because I was one of a handful of men. But it was a fabulous day, and the small business Waterloo Region Small Business Center and the chamber and our women's leadership committee do a fabulous job.